Joining us, Joe Cirincione, president of Plowshares Fund and the author of Bomb Scared, The History and Future of Nuclear Weapons, which we're going to get to in a moment. Joe, let's talk first about this debate. Bottom line is, Iran is still pursuing nuclear ambitions. Does it even matter whether or not the sanctions are working?
Oh, there's no question that the sanctions are having an impact on Iran. The economy is crippled. The divisions within the government are growing. I mean, they have very real problems, and there's more sanctions being added almost every week. The European Union just voted to stop importing oil from Iran. That's going to kick in July. The U.S. just put new sanctions on the Iranian bank that constricts the ability of the bank to just do basic things like transfer funds and get foreign investments. No, we have time to let these sanctions really roll into place. I think they're softening up the Iranian regime.
So is it realistic to think, though, that someday, somehow, despite the fact that Iran has ignored the UN and everybody else about the nuclear program, that somehow these sanctions will force Iran to abandon the program altogether?
I don't think the sanctions alone will do that. I mean, all this is really geared at negotiations. And in fact, what you saw Iran announce yesterday, these so-called advances in its nuclear program, are also aimed at increasing its negotiating leverage. This is Iran's response to the sanctions. You hit us, they're saying, we're going to hit you back, except they're in a fundamentally weak position. They're trying to puff themselves up, but it's all aimed at the negotiating table. Just yesterday, Iran finally responded to the European Union, saying they were willing to come back to talks. Those talks are expected to start sometime in the next month.
Joe, we talk a lot about Iran's nuclear program. Let's take a moment to talk about ours, because a big story from the Associated Press came out this week. We actually talked a little bit about it last week, about a reduction in some of our nuclear arms and a proposal by the Obama administration to cut our nuclear to what is described as some new lows we haven't seen since the 1950s. What impact would that really have, especially in the world today where we see other countries further arming themselves or attempting to with nuclear weapons?
Sure. What we're talking about is a Pentagon-led review of options for the president. Every president wants to have options. The Pentagon is laying out a range of options. One option is to do nothing, stay right where we are, and you go all the way to the other extreme, maybe cut 80% of the force, get down to a few hundred nuclear weapons. I think, of course, it's likely we'll end up someplace in the middle. Here's the situation. There are about 20,000 nuclear weapons in the world. The U.S. and Russia have 19,000 of them. No other country has more than 300. This whole review is aimed at looking at ways that we can reduce Russia's arsenal and reduce our own. And you could go down to, say, 1,000 weapons and still have a very healthy buffer against any other potential adversary.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but do you think we're the only ones that are really talking seriously about reducing our nuclear weapons, though?
Well, it's us and Russia. We're the ones with the biggest stockpile.
Is Russia trustworthy on this, that they're actually reducing their nuclear weapons as well?
They actually have fewer nuclear weapons than we have right now, in part because their systems are just aging and they're taking them out. And the new START treaty that the U.S. and Russia negotiated and went into force last year is giving us verification procedures. So we don't have to trust them. We actually go to their sites. Every time the Russians move a missile, move a bomber, they're required to notify us about it. So we have a very good intelligence now on Russian nuclear forces.
I hope so. We would rather have good intelligence than the opposite, right, Joe? Certainly something we're going to be talking a lot more about. Always appreciate your insights and look forward to having you back, Joe. Thanks again.
My pleasure, Jenna. Thank you.